Hi, I'm Lucy Rome, and I came with my family to Katzrin in the north of Israel, in the Golan, in 2019. That's about 4.5 years ago. So, about 6 months before the corona pandemic, we arrived here. And we came from London, from England. We were very much drawn to Israel as a family. We've been here for many years on holiday in the Golan. We love Kashmir, we love nature, we love being part of Israeli community, and the lifestyle that we have here is fantastic. I think also what really pushed us in a way to leave London and leave England was the anti-Semitism that we could see rising. At that time, we had Jeremy Corbyn as head of the Labour Party, and there was a real potential that he was going to get into leadership, that he could win the election. And for us, that was just a horrific situation, that we could consider ourselves living in a country where someone who is very openly anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-everything that we stood for, being the leader of that country. So we had a huge pull to come to Israel, and we had a big push that we felt we needed to get out of England, and that's been borne out. Really has been borne out, particularly at the moment. We have lived through some difficult times here. We lived through Corona. We all had a difficult time in the whole world living through Corona. But we were glad to be here because we were in nature, we were out of London, and we managed. And now here we are in this situation with the war. We are just seeing much more and more, and feeling much more and more that we're part of Israel, part of Israeli society. I have 3 daughters who are desperate now to join the army. I have a soon to be 18-year-old, and this has really made her realise that she wants to be part of the army, because she feels very strongly that we need to be able to defend our country, our homeland here as Jews. Just tell you very briefly a background about myself quickly. I wasn't born Jewish. I became Jewish about 21, 22 years ago, in my late 20s. I had a very different perspective growing up on what it was to be Jewish, or rather I didn't really have a perspective because I didn't really know very many Jews. I met Jewish friends at university and was very drawn to the culture, and was fascinated by the religion, and decided to become Jewish when I met my now husband, and we went on a journey together. We were neither of us particularly religious, and we became religious Jews, and we're very, very happy. So for me, I can see both sides. I used to work for a national newspaper. I'm now a teacher. I used to work for the Times and Sunday Times, and I was shocked that as a non-Jew, I was seeing the media and the news in one way, and I believed things that I read, particularly from establishment newspapers and establishment media, companies such as the BBC. I just thought that Israel was in many ways to blame for things, for sure, because that was what the dialogue and the narrative was. And then when I became much more interested in Judaism, and I became Jewish, I was still working at the Times and Sunday Times newspaper. And I had a complete shift because I was looking at it from a different perspective. And I realized, wow, I was so wrong in my assumptions about media generally, not just about Israel, but just that you can't believe what you read. Even in those days, and we're talking about the early 2000s, where there was no social media, there was news was what you read in the newspaper or saw on the television. But even then, there was a narrative. and I was shocked and appalled, and I've just seen that borne out. And I think that people don't realise that what they see, what they read about, is not black and white. It's so nuanced, and they do see a very black and white picture. And we're seeing such hatred, and the anti-Semitism that's obviously always been there is just being able to rise up. And there's outlets, and now with social media, it's just out of control. So I'm shocked and appalled, but I'm not surprised. And I'm so worried for my friends and family, and all of the Jews that live outside of Israel, because it's a worrying situation where there is just so much hatred. I'm glad we're here. I used to be a teacher. I was a teacher I'm a teacher here now. Just started recently in the local high school here in Katzrin. I was a teacher in London for 16 years in a Haredi Jewish primary school in northwest London in Golders Green, which is the heart of the Jewish community in London. And I worried every day. My kids used to go to a different school. They went to a very Zionistic school, actually, which was very linked with Israel. Many Israeli families sent their children there. So we had a wonderful Israeli kind of experience before we even came here. But I worried every day that I sent my kids to school, because there were security guards on the door that very clearly needed to be there. And we used to have to practice something called sleeping lions, where my kids would practice probably, I don't know, once a week, once a month, whatever it was, where they would pretend to be asleep under desks. They would call it sleeping lions to make it sort of less scary for the children, because what they were doing was they were practicing what to do in an evacuation if a situation occurred where a terrorist threat was such that the children needed to stay within the classrooms and the doors needed to be locked. They would have to get down under the tables, and they told me about this, and they said, oh, it's quite fun, we play this game called Sleeping Lions. But I know what it was, because as a teacher in another school, I was having to do that with my class too. I would have to lie in front of the door. We didn't have locks on the doors, so I was in front of the door. If there was to be a terrorist in the building, we would have the children under the desk, and I would lie in front of the door in the hope that I would block them coming in to the classroom, which is a really scary thing to have to do. I feel much safer here. I'm much safer in Israel than I would feel in London, to be honest with you. I'm very nervous. I speak to friends very often, very nervous. So a couple of weeks ago, I decided, when the opportunity came, to go to the south to hear what happened on 7th of October and see what happened with my own eyes, in terms of like the places in the country. I'm in the north. I don't know very much about the south of Israel. It's not somewhere that I've travelled to. So I wanted to bear witness. I went with my husband and one of our kids. She really wanted to go, and we felt it was important for her to be part of it. So we're living through a scary, very scary part of history for us in Israel and as Jews. And it was a very memorable experience. And one thing that I would say hit me the most, all of it was very impactful and shocking and upsetting. But the thing that really got to me the most was we visited a kibbutz called Alonim, and there were workers there, farm workers, from Nepal, Nepalese and Thai workers. I think around 20 plus workers were murdered, brutally murdered, and their accommodation area that we went to was just in the most horrific state. They had been shot, murdered, and it was unbelievably scary to think that these workers, who they're not Israeli, they're not Jewish, and yet there was no mercy. They held up their passports and begged to be saved, and the Hamas had no. There was just no humanity in there at all, and to smell the smell of death, and to be in an area where these people had been murdered was beyond shocking. And now that place has been taken down. So I'm glad that we bore witness, and that we bore witness to the other places that we went to. We have to stand with Israel, stand by Israel. Israel has a right to defend itself, and we're just seeing the most unbelievable anti-Semitism, anti-Israel feeling throughout the world, which unfortunately has always been there. It's just, we just hope that we have to do what we've got to do, and we hope there's a good outcome for us here.